It began with a voice that had been silent for years, but never again. Within a tense court, the sound of footsteps echoed as Meri Brown rose from her seat and walked toward the stand. No cameras were permitted, but had there been, every camera would have been focused on her. The lady who used to sit quietly in the background of polygamy, now walking into the spotlight of justice. She stood in a dark blue blazer, her blonde hair fastened back in a non-incense knot. Clutched in her hand was a folder packed with papers, evidence of years spent keeping her family together and getting little back. Her eyes did not blink. Not when she walked past Robyn sitting next to Kody. Not when she locked eyes with the man who had once vowed to give her an equal life and spiritual dignity. She moved to the microphone and lowered it a bit. The courtroom was silent. Meri fixed her eyes on the judge, then turned her head calmly to address the courtroom. "Honor," she started, her voice firm, but shaking with long-hidden anger and sorrow. "I stand here today to reclaim what was owed to me, not only as a wife, but as a woman, as a mother, as a human being." She paused. Her eyes flicked toward Kody, who sat stiffly, arms folded across his chest, jaw clenched. "I want what's mine," she said again, "and I'm not backing down." A wave of murmurs is swept across the courtroom gallery. For years, Meri Brown was the loyal first wife of a man who gradually but openly diverted his affections elsewhere. Fans had watched on Sister Wives as her marriage disintegrated under the glare of reality television. They had witnessed her heartbreak, her emotional loneliness, her short-lived catfish debacle, and her attempts to stay attached to a disintegrating family. But all of that was not today. Today was the day of Coyote Pass, a 12-acre slice of land in Arizona that represented more than trees and dirt. It was a promise, a home to be an allegedly equal division of real estate among the wives. Kody's fantasy claimed their investment, their inheritance. Only that inheritance had been stolen. Behind Meri sat Janelle, arms crossed, lips drawn into a tight line. The years had aged them both. But in Janelle's eyes burned the same fire that flickered in Meri's, a shared sense of betrayal. They had entered the courtroom not as former sister wives, but as allies, as women who had been pushed to the margins of their own lives, and were finally fighting to draw a new boundary. The judge, a calm woman in her 60s, nodded at Meri. "Mrs. Brown, you may proceed." Meri nodded and unfolded one piece of paper. "This," she started, holding up the paper, "is an August 14, 2018 payment statement. It's a deposit from my business account into the family trust. This trust was intended to cover the Coyote Pass property, and yet my name was not included on the deed." She held up another sheet of paper. "This is our real estate broker's email confirming my investment interest." A pause. "And this," she said, her voice growing tight, "is a duplicate of the show contract signed by us, all wives and wives, agreeing that income from taping would be used to support our shared family future building homes on this land." Her lawyer, sitting to one side, nodded slightly. She went on, "When Kody and I legally divorced in 2014 so that he could adopt Robyn's kids, I did so thinking that spiritual equality would still exist, that our family, although restructured, would respect the covenants we made." She gazed at Kody straight on. "That was a lie." Kody's jaw clenched further. Robyn fidgeted uncomfortably next to him, her eyes slipping downward. "I spent 30 years in this family. I raised a child. I contributed to building a show that made this place possible. And now I've been informed quietly, indirectly, but deliberately, that I'm not worthy of a single acre." She clutched the rim of the stand. "I surrendered my legal marriage. I surrendered my voice, but I'm finished giving." Behind her, Janelle nodded forward as if to say silently, "Me, too." Meri inhaled slowly and turned to the judge. "This isn't about real estate. It's about dignity, keeping your promise, not allowing one man to redefine history for his own gain. The courtroom was still, each individual waiting with rapt attention. The judge inquired, "Mrs. Brown, are you claiming that the Coyote Pass property was always meant to be split 4 ways among the 4 wives?" "Yes, Your Honor, that was the deal. Verbal, emotional, financial, and on paper. Did you know your name wasn't on the deed?" "Not until late 2023, when Janelle and I started comparing documents." "And what did you do?" "I talked to Kody," he insisted. "He worked harder, so he should have more. But we didn't set it up on who made what. We set it up to split the land because we were a family." The judge slowly nodded and took a note. The bailiff stepped up with an evidence folder and presented it to the clerk. Kody's lawyer stood up next, objecting to the emotional context and arguing that Meri hadn't contributed financially like Kody had. Her involvement was spiritual, he declared coldly, not financial. Meri retreated from the stand, hardly managing to stifle a scoff. Her lawyer, a keen-eyed woman in a tan suit, stood up. "With all due respect, this whole family was under one financial umbrella. Their TV money, business income, and common accounts were all blurred on purpose by Mr. Brown. Meri wasn't merely a spiritual wife. She was an unpaid partner in a decadescal-long business that paid for Coyote Pass." The judge arched an eyebrow. Outdoors, reporters clustered on the courthouse steps. Rumor had already started to seep within. Kody glared at Meri, his expression impassive. Formerly, she had gazed at him with adoration. Now, she gazed at him like an enemy. She had lost everything, and that's what made her so dangerous. Coyote Pass was not simply land. It was a promise, a dream in wrapped dust and pine trees. And for years, it was the only thing that kept Meri Brown holding on to hope that perhaps, she still belonged in the family. But now that fantasy was disintegrating. Meri and Janelle sat together in the consultation room of the courtroom, their attorneys softly arranging exhibits and evidence files. Between them lay a map of Coyote Pass for areas of land in Flagstaff, each originally designated for one wife. But naming doesn't entail owning. "You see," Janelle explained slowly, pointing to the map. "Our names are not on any of these. Nothing. Not a square inch." Meri didn't respond. She already had known. She'd known for months. The betrayal hadn't been sudden. It bled and incrementally, concealed beneath years of gaslighting, smiling cameras, and Kody's constantly shifting visions. She remembered sitting around the fire pit with the family during those early Flagstaff years, listening to Kody outline his grand plan. "We'll each have a section. We'll build 4 homes, close but not too close, and this will be our legacy." Robyn had beamed. Christine looked skeptical. Janelle asked about utilities. And Meri held on to those words like oxygen, because at that time she was hanging on by a thread. Their spiritual marriage had already been legally dissolved, so Kody could adopt Robyn's children. But he had promised her, "You'll always be my wife in every way that matters." Those words replayed in her head like an old broken lullaby. They sounded like a warning. The discovery came in 2023. Janelle had been going over tax documents, attempting to figure out why she'd been sent a late notice of property tax. When she went down to the courthouse to sort it out, she received more than mere explanations. She received the truth. "I asked to see who the legally owned plots were. Okay," Janelle told Meri later, "and your name wasn't listed." "Mine wasn't either. Rather, only 2 names came up again and again. Kody Brown and Robyn Brown." Challenged him. Janelle went on, her tone acid with rage. "He said he gave the most money, so it made sense." Meri gazed at her. "He said the same thing to me." Janelle laughed scornfully. "Of course he did. It's a pattern of control." It wasn't the first time Kody had moved the goalposts. Over the years, he'd spun promises into obligations, told them what they needed to hear on camera, in private, at family gatherings. "It's all shared. We're building this together. I see the vision. Trust me." And they did. For years, Meri specifically had gone to tremendous lengths to remain within the family sphere. Even after the 2015 catfishing scandal. Even after Kody publicly distanced himself, she remained because she knew her loyalty would eventually be rewarded. I kept telling myself, Meri, in a barely audible voice in the hallway outside the courtroom, that if I just waited long enough, he'd come back. That I still mattered. But he didn't, and she didn't. Not in his eyes. Legal strategy, a broken trust. Their lawyers huddled together with them over a conference table. This isn't just about property, said Meri's attorney. It's about fiduciary responsibility. Kody promised each wife a share and then shifted ownership behind the scenes. It could be argued as constructive fraud. Janelle's lawyer nodded, especially considering they shared show income and commingled funds. That establishes a trust, and if the trust was violated without disclosure, we can establish intent to defraud. Meri looked down at a document which read Land Transfer Filing 2021. It depicted Kody putting Plot 3 in a joint tenny with Robyn Brown. No mention of the other women, no signature, no warning, just Kody and Robyn. Kody's rationalization, the 92% fabrication. Kody was condescending during his deposition. I paid for 92% of the ground. The others committed to pay, but I advanced the funds. I needed to be in control so I could ensure the ground got built correctly. He grinned, like the argument was irrefutable, but it wasn't because the funds weren't entirely his. The money from the judge's gavel rested silently, commanding attention, but no one dared move. The courtroom held its breath, waiting to see what would unfold next. Meri Brown straightened the collar of her blouse and drew in a steadying breath. Her hands were steady, but inside, her heart pounded not with fear, but with the fierce pulse of justice finally breaking free after years of silence and betrayal. The court clerk stepped forward. "Miss Brown, please approach the stand." A hush swept through the room like a rising tide. Meri rose, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom. It landed on Kody and Robyn. Kody sat stone-faced, fingers tapping in impatient rhythm on the polished wood. Robyn's lips moved in nervous whispers to their attorney. Both watched her walk forward, watched as she stood tall beneath the crushing weight of years they'd hoped would never be exposed. This was her moment, the first strike in a battle long overdue. Her voice broke the silence, calm, clear, unwavering. "Your Honor, I grew up in a family where silence was not just loyalty, was policy. I was told to be patient, to have faith, to wait. I was told if I waited long enough, things would even out." She paused, eyes fixed on her hands before, lifting them to meet the judge's gaze. But waiting doesn't build houses. Waiting doesn't put your name on property deeds. Waiting doesn't protect your rights. That is why I am here today. Her lawyer stepped forward, holding a thick folder, the weight of truth inside. Over 40 pieces of evidence, payment transfers, legal filings, emails, text logs, and most damningly unedited contracts and correspondence from TLC itself. Meri opened the folder, lifting a document high for all to see. "This," she said, "is the 2018 contract signed by every family member. It states that money from TLC and shared businesses would be invested equally in developing and distributing the Coyote Pass land." The judge nodded slowly. Exhibit 17A admitted. Kody shifted uneasily in his seat. Meri pressed on. "We were told each wife would receive her own parcel. Kody promised that the land would be our legacy built together, shared equally. But in 2023, I learned the truth. The land was legally divided without our knowledge or consent. All parcels were controlled solely by Kody and Robyn." Shock rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Meri's attorney stepped up, brandishing emails from the family's real estate attorney. One was read aloud, "Robyn and I are the only ones seriously investing in the land. The others can build later if they want to stay involved. Email from Kody, February 2021. Another from Robyn a month later. It's better to finalize paperwork before the wives start asking questions. Less drama later. Gasps erupted like wildfire. Robyn paled. Kody blinked rapidly and then sneered from the bench. That's taken out of context. The judge's gavel slammed down, silencing the courtroom instantly. Mr. Brown, you will remain silent unless spoken to. Meri didn't flinch. I never received notice of any deed transfer. Though I paid property taxes from my boutique and media income, my name was erased from ownership records. She turned sharply to Kody. Why? Because I trusted you. Kody avoided her eyes. Meri flipped to another page. This payment. $18,200 for my Lalau income transferred into the joint account used to buy the land. I was told that secured my plot. She looked back to the judge. I have 6 more like this. And now I'm told I didn't invest enough, that I wasn't serious. But I was invested. Your Honor, I put my life, my name, and my dignity into this for a man who made me invisible. The courtroom fell deathly silent. These Highland TV reporters paused their note-taking, stunned. The judge cleared her throat. To clarify, you claim there were mutual, verbal, written, and financial agreements among the family, and you acted in good faith on these agreements. Yet your name was removed from the legal ownership of the property. Yes, Your Honor. And that Mr. and Mrs. Brown, Kody and Robyn, acted in bad faith by transferring ownership without your knowledge? Yes. Are you prepared to seek full compensation or force a sale? Meri didn't hesitate. I want what's mine. Either they buy me out at market value or we divide the land as promised. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Finally, Kody rose. Jaw clenched, arms crossed, like a man cornered by his own arrogance. Did you tell Meri about the deed transfer? The judge asked bluntly. No, Kody answered. Why not? I didn't think she cared anymore. He was distant, unsure if she wanted to develop the land. Did she contribute financially? Maybe. I don't know. Meri's lawyer stood, thrusting bank statements before him. Yes, she contributed. Yet you excluded her. I had to move fast. Robyn and I were serious about this, Kody snapped. The room buzzed again. A reporter scribbled furiously. The judge frowned. Mr. Brown, did you use shared family funds to purchase property registered only in your and Mrs. Brown's names? Yes? The mask cracked? The dominant patriarch revealed as a man who abused trust, misused family finances, and silenced the women who built his empire. Robyn buried her face in her hands, avoiding the judge's gaze. Unseen footage from TLC, some never broadcast, would later confirm the timeline of deceit. Meri had done the impossible. She shattered decades of silence and stood unbroken in the courtroom's light, confronting the man who once controlled every facet of her life, and the world finally listened. Outside, Meri stood on the courthouse steps as night fell. Cameras thrust forward, microphones extended. Supporters shouted encouragement. But Meri wasn't here for spectacle. I didn't come to hurt anyone, she said softly, voice trembling yet resolute. I came here to stop being erased. For too long, we were told to smile and stay quiet. That ends now. This is about equality, about truth, about telling your story on your terms. Behind her, Janelle nodded solemnly. Together, they walked away. The judge's call for the next witness changed the atmosphere. Mrs. Robyn Brown, please come forward. Silence deepened. Even the rustle of papers ceased as the courtroom held its breath. Robyn rose slowly. Her heels clicked sharply on the polished floor. Her eyes, once confident and commanding on TV, now flickered with fear. The polished veneer of the favorite wife had cracked. She sat, trembling slightly, smoothing the sleeve of her long cardigan. A bailiff approached. Do You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." "Yes," Robyn whispered. And so it began. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence, the tension thick enough to feel. Robyn's voice trembled slightly as she tried to explain, her fingers nervously twisting a ring on her hand. "I never really questioned it. I just assumed the others had stepped away, that they didn't want to be involved anymore. It seemed easier to accept that than to stir up trouble." Her eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and sorrow, as if the weight of her own inaction was suddenly undeniable. "I trusted him to take care of everything, the legal details, the paperwork. I thought that was what I was supposed to do." But the words hung in the air, fragile and hollow against the growing realization that her silence had cost more than she ever imagined. The judge's gaze bore into her, and the courtroom waited for her to confront the truth she had been avoiding, that by not asking questions, by not insisting on transparency, she had allowed the rights of the very women who shared this dream to be quietly erased.